rules of the road, or the navigation rules, which are commonly known as the rules of the road. Many of you already know a lot of these rules because you've been out there sailing and because you've been out driving on the road.
I'd like to present
we'll see that
Captain
here
Roger
as I go through these beginning slides that
Hello,
a lot of
sailors.
the rules for driving are similar to the ones on the road. We have the red stop sign,
Captain Robert
green
Benzow.
or yellow lights for caution. A green light means to go. Of course, blue lights have to do with flashing blue lights with law enforcement. We use sound signals on the car on the road and also on the water. And when you get to a intersection that's uncontrolled, the vessel to the right has the right of way. Again, on the road, restricted visibility, we turn our lights on. If you're on a two-lane road, a narrow road, you keep to the right. If you're on a freeway, similar to a traffic separation scheme on the water, traffic flows in one direction. And we also use various signals to indicate our changing lanes or our intent to change directions. So you see there's a lot of stuff on the road that you already know for on the water. Well, here's a true story about a shrimp boat that was offshore in Florida. It is sailing motoring with its outriggers out because the shrimp boat's a lot more stable, but it does make it a little harder for it to turn and maneuver. Well, he spots this sailboat off his starboard that's going to cross his bow. He thinks the sailboat's going to change course and pass to his stern, but unannounced it does not. It just keeps on coming. He shines his spotlight over on the sailboat, and there's no one on deck, so he's assuming that it's on autopilot. By now they're getting really close, so he turns hard over, sounds his horn, and up pops four guys from down below looking at him. And as the shrimp boat passes close quarters to the sailboat, he demasts, one of his outriggers demasts the sailboat, after which this crew yells back at him, "Sailboats have the right of way." Well, the rules of the road here, we have some questions that come up. Was the shrimp boat engaged in fishing? Did the sailboat have the right of way? Was the sailboat a vessel not under command? Was the shrimp boat a vessel restricted in her ability to maneuver? And was the sailboat required to have a lookout? We see some new terms here: not under command, restricted in ability to maneuver. And we're going to be getting into the rules, and we're going to answer all these questions, along with who had the responsibility to avoid this accident between the shrimp boat and the sailboat. Well, by the time we get to the end of the webinar here, I think you'll already have the answers to all these questions. We're going to start out by an overview here, looking at the purpose of the rules, the book, the two sets of rules. We'll talk about that and what separates them, and then take a look at the various parts, A, B, C, and D, which cover the general rules, steering and sailing rules, the lights and shapes, and sounds and signals. So the whole purpose of these rules of the road is to prevent a collision. In other words, collision avoidance, something we definitely want to avoid. Well, to achieve this goal, the Coast Guard has come up with the navigation rules. It's a written book, about 38 different rules. They're commonly known as the rules of the road. And it states in this paragraph in the annex that any vessel that is 12 meters or 39.4 meters or feet long is required to have a copy of it on board. Now, this is going to be changing. The Coast Guard has made a proposal to require that all vessels 16 feet or more carry a copy of the rules. They are very involved, very daunting, so having a copy on board certainly helps you keep track of what the rules are. And as we go through this, it may seem a little daunting to you, the amount of stuff we get into, especially the Rule 24 on tugboat rules. You may not have seen a lot of these lights, but hang in there. We're going to get through them. And at the end of the webinar, we have some links that you can go to for applications on iPhones or Android phones or just on your internet. So the navigation rules apply upon the vessel's location. That's what separates the two sets of rules. We have the international rule and we have the inland rules. For the most part, both of these sets of rules read almost the same, but there are some exceptions, and we'll see that as we go through here. So what separates the two rules is what we call the Colregs demarcation lines. It's written in the rule book itself, separation between the inland and international waters. Well, what is defined as international and inland waters? We show the example here of in the Mississippi Sound, where I used to sail in Biloxi, Ship Island, and Horn Island. There's a magenta line on the chart itself called the Colregs demarcation line, and here's an example of how it's written in the rule in Annex 5. Well, any water that are inland rules, you're shoreward of that line is the inland rule. The international rules apply to any waters seaward of the Colregs demarcation line. In some areas, this demarcation line may be as close as 50 feet from your shore. So you don't have to be, 10 miles, 12 miles out offshore to be in the seaward, the international rules. It may be just a short distance from where your boat is docked. So the best thing to do is check your chart, see where the demarcation line is, and then know which rule applies to the water that you're sailing in. I'm going to start out by taking a look at Part A here, the application of the rules, its responsibility, and general definitions. Rule 1 is application has to do with both international and inland waters. We define the international waters as upon the high seas and connecting waters navigable by seagoing vessels. On the high seas is a key word for the international rules. And then the inland waters include all U.S. waters shoreward of that demarcation line, the Great Lakes in the U.S. portion, because if you're in the Great Lakes area, you have the Canadian side, so you have to find the line that puts you on the U.S. side, and then the Mississippi rivers and western rivers. So if you're shoreward of the demarcation line, then the inland rules apply. Rule 2 has to do with responsibilities between vessels. Nothing in these rules will relieve you from your obligation to prevent a collision. There are no excuses. However, you do get a get-out-of-jail card. If the other vessel is not doing what it's supposed to, then you can depart from the rule to avoid that immediate danger, and vessels are required to deviate from the rules if necessary to avoid any immediate danger.